wait for him to come on, and then I'll start answering questions that they may have. I'm still in quarantine today, at least day 9 for my family, so we have until next Thursday, and we can get out. We moved to Italy a couple weeks ago, and they quarantined us. We self-quarantined after we got home, but one of my attorneys has diabetes, and that's a comorbidity that I just can't, chance I can't take. So I have to stay away from the office while she's in there. So we got another week at home. Let me tell you, it's hard. I'm not a homebody at all, and it's difficult to be in the house like this. Or we got Astra, and then we got a whole bunch of letters that I don't know. My name is Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Answering any questions you have about divorce, child custody, alimony, any custody in general, being a lawyer. Ask me anything, and I will help you out with it. Got Brittany on. Like I said, I'm a divorce attorney here in Salt Lake City, answering questions. So if you have anything about divorce, child custody, ask away. I'll help you as best I can. I always say this at the beginning of these live sessions. As a divorce attorney in Utah, I can give specific answers to questions in Utah. If it's outside of Utah, I'm not an attorney outside of Utah, so I can't give specific answers. Because I don't know those states' laws. I can give kind of general principles and how I kind of think through problems, but that's how I approach this when I answer questions here. And there's no attorney-client privilege in any of this. You haven't paid me. I don't really know you, so I'm just answering some questions, but realize that I'm going to talk about this in a crowd, and when you write things, that there's no privilege that attaches. Okay, Ray. Been married 26 years. If I leave, all right, just finish that one on up, and I'll answer that for you. Lambo, thoughts on access visits during this pandemic. So, yeah, this the coronavirus has kind of messed things up a little bit. The way I think about this, and the way I'm pretty sure every judge in America thinks about this that handles family law and custody, is you need to work together to for parent time and everything else right now, like really, really come together and really communicate well on these things. I've made some TikToks and some videos about the spring break that's coming up, and that's going to be kind of difficult, and how to think through that process of your child maybe going on spring break or being with the other parent for a long time. For example, traveling in a car is much safer than traveling on a plane at this point, I think, because you can control the environment in a car better than you can in a plane. So there are lots and lots of considerations that go into this. I wouldn't, if my ex told me that they were going, I don't have an ex, but if I had an ex and she told me that she was going to take our kids to Seattle right now, I would say no. But if she said, I'm going to put them in the car and I'm going to drive down to St. George, which here in Utah is about 200 miles away from Salt Lake City, yeah, that's a totally different deal. But you really need to come together and really work as a team right now to ensure that parent time happens and the kids are going back and forth and you're not fighting about these things. Because if you're seen as the one parent who's trying to muck up the works or use a pandemic to get more time with your kids, judge is going to freaking have at you, just slap you around. So you got to think through that. Okay, so Ray. Sorry, let me get this out of the way here. Ray, been married 26 years. If I leave, how much do I give her? All right, I assume you're talking about alimony, because your assets are going to be split up, and usually, depending on your state, but usually it's a 50-50 split on assets, and it's usually a 50-50 split on debts as well. Alimony is a little more complicated. I'm not sure exactly how much you would pay. In Utah, you could pay up to 26 years, or the length of the marriage, if you were to pay alimony. Now, that's the length that you could pay. The amount you would pay per month is really dependent on your standard of living, and that's how much you make. Not how much you make, how much you spend every month as a family, all in, gas in the car, lights, electricity, everything in the house, mortgage, how much you're putting in 401ks, everything, that's your standard of living. And then we look at the different incomes for the spouses and determine how much a spouse needs alimony and then how much the other spouse can pay for alimony. And we figure out an alimony amount like that. It's always a range. So it could be, X, or it could be X plus 1,000 or whatever it is. It's a little more difficult to answer that question. And in fact, I don't even answer that question when people come in to meet with me because it's so specific that I need their numbers before I can give them an intelligent answer. All right, Ray, but just want to do some homework. Yeah, so it's really, really difficult. This is one of the most difficult, alimony is one of the most difficult subjects that we deal with. In divorce, you really need to sit down with an attorney in your area and do a very, very good analysis. So you are bringing in your monthly budget, you know exactly how much you're spending, you know how much your spouse makes, you know how much you make. Sit down with those numbers, and the attorney you're meeting with is going to be able to give you a fairly good idea of what you're looking at per month in alimony. And then you can always negotiate the length of alimony, the length of time you're going to pay alimony. So think about it like that, but really sit down with an expert in your area, bring in all of that financial data as much as you possibly can, and just hash over it when you're meeting. That's going to help you out better than anything else, Ray. We want to leave amicable. We're both in agreement. Well, you're both in agreement right now until you see specific numbers about alimony. Let me tell you, I get lots and lots of people that say, hey, this is going to be super easy. And then you start fighting about kids and you start fighting about money. So it's amicable until it's not, Ray. So go meet an attorney. Get that figured out, man. Hey, Jill, appreciate you being here. I'm Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah. Ask me any questions you have about divorce, child custody, alimony, child support, anything like that. I'll answer everything I can for everybody. Okay, Lambo, what about the fact that we are being asked to stay inside and access visits goes against that? Well, this depends, and it's a good point. So this depends on where you are. So if you're in San Francisco, that may well be the case. I don't know. They've locked down like everything in San Francisco. But here in Salt Lake, you can still go out. You can still do things. It's kind of a soft quarantine. It's not a super hard quarantine. So we've shut down restaurants. We've shut down bars. We've shut down all these things. But, my family and I still go on walks every day because if we didn't, we'd probably kill each other. So it just depends on, how it is where you are, but I can almost guarantee that the way it's written is not written in such a way that you can't actually take your child to your ex's house so they can have parent time. I can almost guarantee the ordinances and the laws are not written in that manner. Ray, great, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It was a good question, man. Good question. Oh, and I can't tell genders on here. I say dude. I call everybody dude and man. So if you're a female and I do that, I don't mean any disrespect. It's just how I talk, especially when I don't know somebody's gender. Lambo, how to impute income on someone who is self-employed and receives significant cash income. Okay. So this is how we do the calculation here in Utah. If you are self-employed, so say you have your own business like I do, then what we do is we take gross receipts. That's the top line. So we take gross receipts, what's coming into the business, and then we subtract necessary expenditures from the business. Now, necessary expenditures are not necessarily the tax deductions you get from your business, because there are lots and lots of tax deductions that are absolutely not necessary. I mean, I just shove a lot of stuff or pass a lot of stuff through my business so I can pay for things before they get taxed, right? And that's great. That's one of the beautiful things about having a business. But they're not all necessary. Like my car is not actually necessary. It's just something I kind of do to save on taxes. So we take gross receipts and then we subtract the necessary expenditures from that, and that's the income that we use when we determine child support and alimony. Now, on the cash front, this is one of the most impervious problems we have when trying to determine child support and alimony. So you have a W-2 employee, and that's super, super easy. We know exactly what's happening because we know how much is getting paid out, and it's all in a W-2, and it's really easy. If you have a large amount of cash, then what we have to do is we have to go to the bank and get the last however many years of bank records to show the cash deposits, right? Because they're not check deposits, they're cash deposits, and they're kind of here, there, and everywhere. So we really have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and figure out where the cash deposits are, in addition to all of the other deposits that are going in, and determine the income that way. And it becomes much, much more onerous to do it like that. But really, when you have cash, that's the only way to do it. Now, if somebody gets paid in cash and they never actually put it in a bank, they put it in a safe or under a mattress or something, yeah, it's almost impossible, man. Unless they keep receipts on it for some reason, but people who get paid in cash tend not to keep receipts. So if you can get the receipt book, the accounts receivable on a computer, then we can do it that way. But most of the time when people get paid in bundles of cash, they never have receipts. And if they don't put it in a bank, it's just impossible to figure out or to prove anything. So that's one of the very, very toughest situations we have. Thankfully, most people aren't like that, but that really is one of the toughest situations we have in determining alimony and child support. So it's a great question. I appreciate it. Jose, hey, how are you? I'm doing well, man. My name is Marco Brown here, answering questions about divorce, child custody, alimony, anything like that. Is child support mandatory in Indiana when you get divorced? I know a little bit about Indiana because I helped a family member go through a divorce in Indiana. I didn't help him. He had an attorney out there, but I did a little bit of research. Yeah, child support is pretty much going to be mandatory anywhere and everywhere in the United States. Indiana does not have crazy high child support, if I remember correctly. It's a little bit higher than Utah, but yeah, everybody's going to pay some child support out there in Indiana. The only way you ever get out of child support is if you make the exact same amount of money, like you got husband and wife and they make the exact same amount of cash, and you split 50-50. In that way, all the numbers and all the time is exactly the same, and no money passes hands. But other than that, if you got a kid, you're paying some child support. That's just the way it is. Now, if you're the one with the majority time with the child, then you still actually have to pay child support. You have an obligation to use a certain amount of money on your kid. You just don't pay it to the other parent. So it's the parent with the least amount of time that's going to pay the child support to the other parent. So, okay, Lambo. What if that cash was never deposited, but rather saved at home and minimally used in spending? Yeah, so that's the problem that I kind of talked through above. I call it the safe problem. You get cash and you put it in a safe, because I've had these cases, like $500,000 in cash. And safes are, everything goes missing from the safe, man. But I call it the safe problem. So you get paid in cash, you put it in the safe, and then you never really use it. And there's really no way of proving that it even exists unless you take snapshots of it, or somebody's taken an inventory of the safe or some crazy thing, and no one ever does that. So it's just not gonna happen. If you have cash, and you don't deposit it, and there's no way to trace it, then it's almost completely impossible to prove that it exists and to use it when you're calculating alimony and child support. Lambo, okay, thanks. Yep. It was a good question. I appreciate it. Jose, thank you. Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a good question too. We got Lachiva, Andrix on here. So my name is Marco Brown. Ask me any questions you have about divorce, child custody, alimony, child support. I'll answer them for you. Okay, I have pictures, Lambo. I have pictures of home posing with bundles of hundreds. Well, maybe. I mean, so it's impossible. You got bundles of hundreds. That doesn't tell you exactly how much cash you have. It tells you have cash, right? Or the person has cash. So the way you may be able to do that is if they're saying, look, I'm destitute and I have absolutely no money, then you bust out the photos of them sitting there with hundos, and maybe the judge doesn't buy that anymore and kind of imputes them or assumes they make more than they actually do. But without getting down to like brass tacks, this is how much money came in this period of time, it's really, really hard to figure out alimony and child support. But I mean, use what you got, right? If that's what you have, then use it, man. Andrix, question about child support. Okay, ask away, man. We got Chug Jug, Haber Hose. Thanks for being here. My name is Marco Brown, answering questions about divorce and child custody. Andrix, I have primary custody of my daughter. Her father has not paid child support. Okay, sorry that's going on. It's a pretty common thing, unfortunately. Been told that I don't have to drop her off on his weekends because he doesn't pay child support. Is that what you're saying? So somebody told you that because he's not paying child support, you don't have to allow him to see his kid? Is that what you're saying? Or is that what you're asking? Yes. Okay. My understanding is, I know specifically here for Utah, but my understanding is every state in the union is the same way on this. You cannot deny parent time because the person doesn't pay child support. These two things are totally disconnected, right? So the payment of child support and the seeing of your kid are completely different, disconnected. And the seeing of your kid and child support, they're completely disconnected. So if you don't pay child support, you still get to see your kid. And if you don't see your kid, you still have to pay child support. Like I said, totally disconnected stuff. So the problem you run into is that might be a good way to induce him to pay child support because you don't get to see your kid, but it's also wildly inappropriate. It's not good for your child to use your child like that. That's going to damage your kid, and your kid's probably going to like you less for doing things like that because your kid really does want to have a good relationship with your ex. No matter what you think about him or her, your kid wants to have a good relationship, and your kid needs to have a good relationship with all parents with it because that's what kids are. Kids think, when I was a kid, I knew I was half my mom's and half my dad's. And if my mom, they're still married, they've been married for 57 years, but if they had gotten divorced and my mom had spoken poorly about my father and not let him see me, it would have been half of me that was dying, right? So we don't use kids like that. So don't. I mean, even if you could, even if the law allowed it, Andrix, I wouldn't do it. I absolutely wouldn't do it. Don't use a kid like that. Okay. We got Gray, we got Arium, got a few people coming on. My name's Marco Brown. I'm answering questions about divorce and child custody, alimony, child support. You got anything you want to know about being a lawyer? You want to ask me personal questions, as long as they're not like crazy personal, totally fine answering all of those. So ask away. Got Haber Hose that's here. Ask any questions you got, and I will answer them as best I possibly can. We've had some good ones so far about alimony and child support, about what you do when your ex gets paid in cash, how do you figure things out. These have been really good questions so far, so ask away. And I talked about this a little bit before, but with the coronavirus and parent time, what judges are really looking for in people is cooperation between the parents. Do not be sitting there bad-mouthing each other. Do not try to withhold your kid from the other parent because you're kind of freaked out about coronavirus and sending them over there, unless there's some extraordinarily compelling reason you need to work together and come together on these things and just make it work. Because if you are seen as the person who is trying to use a pandemic to get more time with your kid or to not deny the other person parent time, judges are going to slap you around something fierce. It is not going to be pretty at all. So keep that in mind. All right, ask away, people. I'm here for you. I do have some psych on in the background, so I got the AirPod in here. So I don't have any standing questions until I get one. I'm going to watch a little bit of Psych. Psych is one of my favorite shows of all time. I really enjoy it. Doesn't quite come close to Breaking Bad, which is my all-time favorite, but it's a great show. All right, we got Tony here with us. Tony, I'm Marco Brown. I'm answering questions. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah, answering questions about divorce, child custody, alimony, child support, family law, adoption, anything like that. Got Jennifer here with us too. Thanks, Jennifer, for being here. I appreciate it. Okay, we got Arium. 11 years together, not married, have a 7-year-old. Okay. All right. I'll let you kind of finish up that question there. And you want to separate. Okay. Ariam, do you want to know how child support or child custody is going to go? What aspects of this kind of breakup do you want to talk about? You said it would take your kid. Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. Who's been the primary parent? Who's been with your kid the most? Spent the most time with him or her, put him to bed, got him up in the morning, got him ready for school, went to parent-teacher conferences, took him to the dentist. Ariam, who did most of that work? You, all the time. Okay, so you're the primary parent. Let me ask you this question as well. How involved was he with your kid? Is he a pretty involved person? He's always working. Okay, tell me his work schedule, if you would. Does he work 9 to 5? Is he working swings? What's he working? Okay, we got Linda. They call me Sam. Thanks for being here. My name is Marco Brown. I'm answering some questions about divorce and child custody. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah, so ask away. Presently, I'm working with Ariam here. She wants to leave, trying to figure things out, what's going to happen with custody and parent time. 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, so he's gone all the time. Okay. And he drinks a lot as well. All right, so this sounds like, if you're coming into my office and we're working through these things, then the way I'm going to think about this is, one, you've been the primary parent for the entire time. You've been together. You've been the primary parent the entire time. He works all the time. He works from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., so he's not even home when your kid is awake, essentially. So if I'm telling you what I think the odds are pretty good that you're going to get the majority of time with your child. Now, the question can become, do you leave now? How do you handle this? Well, you're not married, if I understood correctly, so you can leave at any time. Now, that's going to be kind of difficult because you're not working right now, but you're going to get yourself in order. You're going to get these things figured out. But yes, you can leave, and then you would file, if you wanted to, you would file a paternity case after that to establish child support, child custody, parent time, these sorts of things. You don't get alimony, depending on your state, but really no. You don't get alimony because you weren't married, but you can establish all of these other things after you move out. And I would probably, in a situation like this, it sounds like you want to move out anyway and you're kind of, champing to the bit. So I'd probably move out and then I would file after that. Get insurance figured out, get extracurricular costs, activity fees, those costs figured out, schooling figured out. You can do all of that in a paternity action afterwards. But I think you have a pretty good case for getting the majority of time with your kid. Just because you're the primary parent, you're always the one there, and he just works so darn much, right? It's great. It's great when people want 50-50 with their kids, but if they work from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. and they're not home when their kids are awake, what are you going to do? You can't do 50-50. It's ridiculous. Ariam, you want to move to a different state. And if anybody else has questions as we're going along here, put them in here and I'll get to them. Ariam, you want to move to a different state. Okay. Assuming there are no court orders keeping you in that state where you are right now regarding the kids, then again, if you lived in Utah, you'd be able to move, right? Married people can do this as well. Like I always use this example. I could get my boys. I'm married. I've been married for about 18, 19 years now. If I really wanted to, I could get both my boys and get on a flight to Paris, and my wife would get really upset with me, but I can do stuff like that because I'm their father, right? I can take them wherever I want. So you're the kid's mom. Under Utah law, you can go anywhere you want. So if you want to move to another state and then wait out the time period for in the other state before you file out there, you can certainly do that. That time period is usually on the order of 3 months. If you have a kid, then you usually have to be in a state for 6 months before that state has authority, or what we call jurisdiction, over the child. So you might have to wait 6 months, and then you can file in whichever state you go to, Ariam. Okay, let's see what we have here. Hopefully that helps out. Okay, draw whatever. So draw, what about a 50-50 shared parenting during the coronavirus, and the other parent won't give the kid, it won't give the kids to you. Oh man. See, this is what should not happen. This is absolutely what should not happen. People should not be using a pandemic to have more time with their kids or deny parent time to the other parent. It's just a butthole move. So what you need to do, I mean, if they're just straight denying, then you got a couple different options, I think. One, you either just go get your kid. So if they're still going to school, and in most places they aren't going to school right now, but if they're going to school and it's your time, just go get your kid from school on your time. That's totally fine, because that's your time. If the kid is at home and the other parent won't give them to you, then you really need to tell them, hey, look, this is not acceptable behavior. We're 50-50 on this. We need to work together. Let's talk, and just hit that and hit that and hit that, and try as hard as you can to talk about this, but constantly communicate about it. We need to talk. Let's do this. Let's talk on the phone. Let's get together and go over this, on and on and on. What are your concerns? How can I assuage those concerns? Just do it, and keep track of all of that. And if that still doesn't work, and you're, a week or two into this, you really need to sit down. You probably need to sit down with an attorney and go over it, because maybe you talk to an attorney about this, and the attorney then sends him or her a letter and says, don't be using a pandemic to do this. This is not acceptable. I'm going to take you back to court. Maybe that solves the problem. But right now, it's all about communication and just being forceful about it. Okay? Let me talk to you about what's going on. What are your concerns? How can I help? How can I help with those concerns? Just do it and do it and do it. And make sure you track all that stuff, because if you have to give it to a judge, you need to be able to prove that you've tried to communicate, and try to communicate a ton. So hopefully that helps you. Okay, we got Jennifer. I'll be filing for divorce and do everything he's not really participated in much. And I will start doing weekends once sorted out. If the kids don't want to leave for one weekend, can he force them to leave when they don't want to? Oh, okay. All right. So this is as I understand the question, Jennifer, you're going to get this going. You're going to have an order regarding parent time. And what you're asking is, do the kids have to go over there if they don't really want to go over there? Well, so this is my rule of thumb with that. Until the kids are 18, they got to go, right? You have an order, and that order is in place until the children are 18. So really they need to abide by the order and go over there, even if they don't want to. Now, if they're getting physically or sexually abused over there, some crazy thing like that, some horrible thing like that, then you need to go to the cops, and you need to go to the court, and you need to change things, okay? But just the kids not wanting to go over, that's really not legitimate. Now, I do have to say, once a kid hits about 16 years old, then that kid is pretty much going to decide to do whatever that kid wants to do. So they're going to decide where to sleep, whether to sleep at mom's, whether to sleep at dad's, because they're 16. And I remember when I was 16, I didn't give a crap what my parents told me, because I was a jerk and I was a 16-year-old. So I just kind of did whatever. And most 16-year-olds, they're not as jerky as I was, but they're pretty independent. They want to be with their friends. They have a car. They're out. They're doing things. They have their own life. They're becoming independent at that point. So they're just going to choose really where to sleep and which parent to go visit. So that's kind of what happens when they hit 16, 17. Before that, though, no, they don't really have a choice. They just need to go over. Unless, of course, there's some abuse going on or something like that. And at that point, you need to go to the Division of Child and Family Services. You need to go to the court, and you need to go to the police and have it taken care of. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. And the other thing I get quite a bit is, what if they don't want to go? I can't force them to go. Well, you know what? Yeah, you kind of can, actually. So if they're, if you got a 200-pound 15-year-old and you're a woman or a man, even a man, that's going to be really tough, right? But we're parents. We get our kids to do a lot of stuff they don't want to do. So if you make it really, really important that they go to dad's house and priority number one, almost all of them are going to go over there. All right, we got T_MW_M. What if the child, 15 years old, doesn't want to go visit the other parent, but the judge said it? Oh, it's the exact same question. Yeah, sorry. It's pretty much the same thing, man. The kids got to go over there. Like I said, around 16, they start making their own decision, but at 15, they still have to go over. Maybe when it hits 16, they start doing their own thing, but at 15, you just need to get them over there. All right, we got Jennifer. All right, I'm sorry I haven't said hi to everybody else. I'll take a second to do that. Hi, my name's Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm answering questions for people about divorce, child custody, parent time, child support, alimony, anything you got, I'm happy to help out. Or Jennifer, if he's living with a roommate, does he have to provide them with their own room? Thank you for answering my questions. Yeah, you're absolutely, you're welcome. They've been good questions, Jennifer. So let's talk through this. So if he's living with a roommate, does he have to provide the kids with their own room? Not necessarily, because we don't take kids away from people simply because they're poor, right? Because they don't have enough space. That's the stuff the Soviet Union used to do, but we don't do that sort of thing in America. You can be poor and you can have kids. Now, if it's a health concern, right, they live in a squalid hole somewhere, then that's another deal. But if they have to stay in dad's room when they're with him and he sleeps on the couch while the roommate's in the other room, yeah, you just kind of make do. That's unfortunate. It's not ideal, right? You don't want that sort of thing. You want your kids to have their own rooms. And specifically when they get to about 8 years old, you want to have kids of different genders, different sexes. You want them to be in their own rooms, right? You don't want them sleeping in the same bed when they get to it. You can up until about 8. That's kind of the line of demarcation we use in Utah. Once they hit 8, you really want your own beds, you want your own rooms. But that's ideal, right? And we don't deal in the ideal world sometimes. So that's just kind of how it is. They got to make do over there. All right, we got voter 1111, draw whatever's back, Hastrid user 244. Thanks for being here. My name's Marco Brown. I'm answering questions about divorce and child custody. So anything you got, ask away, and I will help you as best I can. Jennifer, thank you. Yep, absolutely. They've been great questions. If you have anything else, ask and I'll answer it for you. Let me see if I've missed anything here. We got Tiffany with us too. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for being here. Okay, I think I've answered all of them so far. So ask away, and I'll answer anything I can for you. Got Emphasis here. Thanks, Emphasis. I appreciate you being here. My name is Marco Brown. I got a few other people here too. My name's Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah, helping people out, answer questions about divorce, child custody, alimony, anything like that. So whatever you got, ask away, and I'll help out. I was on here a couple days ago, answered a few questions for a guy in California, and he was super appreciative. In fact, he said, this is great. I would have paid $700 for an attorney to answer these questions. And in California, he's not lying. I mean, I know attorneys out there in California that don't have my resume here in Salt Lake, and they're charging $500 an hour for a divorce. $500 an hour for divorce. I mean, what I charge is pretty high. We're kind of expensive because divorce is all we do. We don't do any other type of law. We don't do car accident cases. We don't do real estate cases. Divorce is it in our office because we want to be exceptionally good at it. So we charge for that. But in California, those people out there are crazy. User 244. Can you make a parent who has visitation get a drug test prior to visitation? This is a great question. So it depends. If the parent has a history of drug use, like a verifiable history of drug use, a whole bunch of DUIs, or they've been in for detox, they have paraphernalia charges, stuff like that, stuff you can objectively verify that they have a problem, then yes, that may well be the case. We do that all the time in our cases. We put drug testing provisions in our divorce decrees all the time to deal with stuff like this. So it's definitely a possibility. Now, if they smoke some weed and they've never really been in trouble and you can't really prove that they smoke weed, that's going to be super hard, right? But if you got some verifiable evidence, DUIs, paraphernalia charges, these sorts of things, yeah, then that's definitely a possibility. Q33, I have so many questions, but not enough characters to type. Do they limit the number of characters that you can type these questions? I don't have any idea. If you need to use multiple entries to get it done, Q33, then go away, man. Go for it. We got funny attorney on here. Are you actually an attorney, or are you just kind of using that handle, man? But yeah, Q33, just start typing away. We'll get through this. User 244. Yep, absolutely. It's a great question. And it happens all the time, unfortunately. I mean, addicts, the toughest thing I deal with in divorce. I have dealt literally with every single type of mental disorder and mental health disorder in the book, in the DSM-5. I was almost a psychology major. Well, I was a psychology major. I was almost a clinical psychologist. My grandmother was an educator and a clinical psychologist and a professor back when women didn't do stuff like that. Smartest woman I've ever met in my entire life. So I've been around this stuff for a long time. I've dealt with everything under the sun. Addicts are the worst. The freaking worst. Can't stand dealing with them, man. This might get me in trouble, actually, with the feds one day, but I don't even take addicts as clients. Once I figure out they're an addict, I say, hey, I'm sorry, we're just not equipped to help you as best you need to be helped, so I need to just send you somewhere else, because they are absolutely the worst. Okay, Q33. My son's father is not very responsible. He doesn't make my son practice good hygiene. Every time he comes home, he smells bad, and they tell me they struggle with water and don't have personal hygiene for him. What should I do? Should I report it? Oh, that's awful. Let me see. Should I report it? Okay. So if it gets to the point, this is really, really difficult for me, because I have a lot of people that come in and say, well, they're wearing the same clothes all the time. They're kind of dirty when they come home. And most of the time it's overblown. I don't think you're doing that, Q33. I really don't. I think you have a serious problem here. But I get that a lot for people coming in. And it's almost always nothing, to be honest. But if you think it's to the point where hygiene is extraordinarily bad and it's affecting them at school, it's affecting their ability to make friends. And usually when their hygiene is poor, it means your ex's house is a hole, just a crap hole. So if that's the case and it's really bad, then you may think about getting a welfare check from the police. You also may think about calling the Division of Child and Family Services, or whatever they call it in your state, and telling them, look, this is the situation, and seeing if they will conduct an investigation if you really think it's to that point. Now, keep in mind, though, that if it's not to that point and you do this and you cry wolf a few times, people aren't going to believe you, right? So you really need to balance this as best you can. But that's the best answer I can give there. Emphasis. 22. My official papers for me to sign were to be sent to me at the end of April. Could they now be delayed? I'm assuming could they now be delayed because of coronavirus? So they could. I mean, it depends. This is going to depend on your state. So here in Utah, all of the courts are open. We have delayed jury trials for the month of March. We've delayed non-essential hearings during the month of March up until like think April 3rd, then we get back on the normal schedule. So some things are getting pushed off, but the clerks are still working. So the paperwork aspect really should be going through. Now, I know other places, this is crazy to me, but there's some other places, I think in Alabama, I can't remember exactly where this was, but I talked to an attorney yesterday, and they just shut down the courts in her county. Like, boom, shut down. They aren't even taking new cases. So you can't even give the court papers to start a new case right now, which is insane to me, because the courts are an absolutely necessary part of our governmental system. But you have some courts that are actually doing that. So I'm not entirely sure. What I can tell you, probably the best way to deal with this is if you have an attorney, talk to the attorney about it. If you don't have an attorney, call the clerk of the court where the papers are and say, hey, this is my situation. What's it looking like? Right? Are you guys backlog? Am I going to get these papers? And just have a conversation with that clerk about it, and maybe that will help out. But that right now, unless you have an attorney, that's probably your best bet, is calling the clerk. Okay, Q33. I brought this to his father's attention for the past 5 years. My son's autistic. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Q33, if you really think it's a problem, right, and you really think it's a serious problem, it's affecting his daily life and his ability to make friends, ability to do well in school, these sorts of things, then yeah, maybe you need to go to Division of Child and Family Services and talk to him about it. Yeah, have him do an investigation. User 244, can my son's dad force him to speak on the phone by sending me threats when it's not court ordered? And what I'm assuming the not court ordered is the conversation, right? So he doesn't have a specific time that he's supposed to call. No, I can't force you to do that. You can make that decision on your own. Like if he's being a jerk, right, and he's threatening you, like, what's he threatening you with? He's not going to get you thrown in jail for it. He's not going to get you held in contempt for it. So it's your decision at that point. All right, we've had a few other people join us. Got Kaylee, Chevy. Thanks for being here. My name is Marco Brown. I'm answering questions about divorce and child custody. I'm a divorce attorney here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So if you have anything about divorce, child custody, alimony, child support, family law related, if you want to talk about being an attorney, great. I'll answer any questions you have. Appreciate the opportunity to do this. Okay, Q33, since his dad can't keep a job, therefore can't afford insurance on my son, can my husband add my son to his insurance? Yeah, absolutely. Just, I don't know what it says in your divorce decree, but no judge is going to get upset with you for adding your son to your new husband's insurance. So just go do it. It's fine. And then your ex needs to pay for half of half of your son's portion of the premium and out-of-pocket costs. But yeah, just go get your son on the health insurance. Tiffany will get primary custody based on that fact. Oh, maybe I missed something here. Okay, my bad. Okay, Tiffany, if mom makes more money than dad, does it mean mom will get primary custody based on that factor? And I think we're talking about that factor alone. So no, very, very unlikely. Again, I know exactly how this works in Utah. I'm not entirely sure how it works in other states, but I do not know of any state in the union that makes the primary determining factor regarding child custody who makes more money, because that's just stupid, okay? One party almost always makes more money than the other, and that has relatively little to do with how they are as a parent and how they are as a husband or wife. So, no, I very, very much doubt that. I actually had somebody in the comment section on a video I did talking about the number one factor in determining child custody and parent time, and that number one factor is who's the primary parent. I had somebody come back and actually say that in some state it was who could provide better. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Okay, Q33. Oh, we already went through that. Okay. There's the insurance question. CQR. In a perfect world, how long does an uncontested divorce take? Well, in Utah, it takes about 45 days. So we have a really short time window. We used to have a 90-day waiting period, and we kind of back that off to 30 days. So it's 30 days plus about 2 weeks for the judge to sign stuff. So it could be 31 days. But I always say that it's going to take a judge probably 2 weeks to get through the queue and to sign your papers. So 45 is here. It really depends on your state and what kind of waiting period they have. I think in Nevada, I don't think they have a waiting period, to be honest, because Nevada laws regarding divorce are an interesting lot because of Las Vegas. But other places, they'll have a much longer period of waiting period. Some of the East Coast states, I think North Carolina, South Carolina, it's like a year that you have to wait before you think you need to be separated for a year before you can even file for divorce. But here in Utah, it's about 45 days. User 244, yes, he's threatening me, saying he better hear from within a certain amount of time. Yeah, again, they're threats. They're threats, and I'm sure you went through them in your marriage. This is probably who he was, probably pretty controlling during the marriage, and it's just an extension of that sort of behavior. But unless you have something in the court order, it's up to you. It's up to your discretion. All right, let's see what we got here. User 244, yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Q33, what rights does my husband have as a child's stepdad if something were to happen to me? Absolutely none. No. The mom and the dad have rights, and the step-parent has essentially none, unless it's a state with a law that I am totally and completely unfamiliar with. So if you were to die tomorrow, your kid would go back to your ex. Tiffany, does support system help? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see if does support system like family help during a custody hearing? Dad has help by family, mom does not. No, not a ton. I mean, the social structure and the social fabric, it helps out in kind of a real world sense. But when it comes to custody itself, determining custody, no, it really depends on the parents. It depends on the mom and the dad and how they are as parents, and how well they get along with the kid, what hours they work. There are lots and lots of determining factors, but the social fabric around the parents really doesn't make that much of a difference. Now, what it can make a difference is if the parents' family are a bunch of losers and drug users, or they abuse people or something like that. So it can have a negative impact, a really negative impact, but it really doesn't mean a ton for a positive impact. All right, so we got Southern Mama. Oh, you were just talking to Q33. Okay. All right, you got a few other people on here. I appreciate you being here. My name's Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah, answering questions about divorce, child custody, alimony, child support, adoption, anything like that. So you got a question, ask away. What happens? This is F. Brown. What happened if you have fully cost of your kid and you were to die? Where would the kid go? The kid's going to go to the other parent. That's just kind of how it's going to go. Unless you have a crazy situation, the kid's going to go to the other parent. And if you were both to die, then it's going to go to whoever the kid goes to in the will. Yeah. Q33, you're absolutely. It's been a pleasure answering the questions. You're totally welcome for that. Can my mental health be used against me? This is Tiffany. Can my mental health be used against me, even if being treated? This is going to depend a little bit. You might want to flesh that out a little bit more for me. Are we talking depression? Are we talking suicidality? Are we talking bipolar disorder? Narcissism? What are we talking about? But on a general level, no, because you're going to get taken care of. And unless you're a real physical or mental danger to the children, then the court's not really going to do anything. We have a specific law here in Utah, in fact, that says, hey, look, unless it debilitates you from actually taking care of the kids or you're posing a risk to them, then mental health does not really come into the picture very much because, most mental health is, you can take care of it. The most common mental health problem people have is depression. I think at any given time in America, 12% of the population is clinically depressed. Within a year time frame, I think 20 to 22% of the population in America is depressed clinically. So if we took people's kids away for depression or things like that, we'd be taking everybody's kids away. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some very serious mental health problems that we need to deal with and that can affect child custody. If you're a narcissist, that one's bad, man. There's no way of getting around that. But if you're an addict as well, like I've talked about addicts before and how terrible they are, these sort of mental health problems really can have an effect. But for the most part, if you're getting treatment and taking your meds, going to therapy, doing your thing, you're probably going to be okay. User 244 does not have a house, car, or job to determine anything with custody. Yeah, again, you can be poor in America and have your kids. Let's say that you don't have anything and you're on the street, though. That's really, that's obviously gonna count for something. But if you can't keep a job, so you've had 7 jobs in a year, then that is going to indicate to a court the kind of person you are and the level of instability the kids are going to have with you. So that's definitely going to go into any sort of custody calculation that a judge is going to make. F. Brown, what happened if you can't find the other kid's parent? Ooh. Okay. I'm assuming, let's assume that it's a divorce and you can't find the other kid's parent. There are actually ways to find people. I find a lot of people who don't want to be found when we file for divorce. But if you really can't, if you're trying to get divorced and you really can't find the other parent at all, then, because usually what we have to do is we have to file and then we have to give the papers to the other person to put them on notice of the divorce or whatever action we're taking. So if we can't do that, then we go and we try to find them, and there are ways we have to find them with private investigators. If we can't do that, then we use email addresses or maybe Facebook, something like that, to get them the papers, to give them notice. So there are a number of different ways that we can give people notice in an alternate method. So we call it alternative service. So I don't know if that answers your specific question, but that's kind of how I read it. Tiffany, a bipolar and depression. All right, so bipolar, if you're taking your meds, Tiffany, you're probably okay because bipolar is one of those that's pretty well treated with medication. So take your meds, do your thing. Depression, like I said, everybody's got depression. I've had depression in the past. I'm pretty healthy mentally, but I've gone through periods in my life where things just absolutely sucked, and I was clinically depressed. I can remember once, and I'm going to share this with everybody. So I went and I applied for the FBI, and the polygraph went bad. They had a false positive on the polygraph. They thought I was lying to them, and I really wanted that job, and I was depressed for like 2 or 3 months after that, like clinically depressed. Didn't go outside. I went to work. I came home. My wife was super worried about me, and she should have been, right? But that's just, we're human beings. That's the way it happens for us sometimes. We don't take people's kids away because we get depressed. User 244, been great. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to answer your questions. They were really good questions. This thing always keeps happening. Okay, we'll do Magical Thinker. If my husband has a tax-deferred annuity before marriage, do I have any legal rights to it? Wow. So if he got the tax-deferred annuity completely and totally with his own premarital money, okay, and has not contributed to that tax-deferred annuity since the marriage, in other words, no marital money has gone into it, then you're out, right? Because it's all premarital cash. and no marital money has gone into it since you've been married. So in that situation, you would be out. Now, if he started the tax deferred annuity before that and then pumped money into it or opened another one with marital money, then yes, you would have a claim to that because he's used marital money to do that. So Magical Thinker, I think I answered your question there. If you have a follow-up to it, just give me a follow-up and I'll answer it. Okay. Okay, so you guys are talking to each other, which is totally cool. All right, we got Sugar Tats coming in. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. My name is Marco Brown, answering questions about divorce and child custody for everybody. Divorce attorney here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Southern Mama, in most states, they won't allow termination of parental rights unless there's a step-parent adoption. That is absolutely correct. And the reason for that is your child gets child support from a parent. And the court's not going to cut that off unless there's somebody else to come in and pay the child support. I know this because I went through an entire trial. It was a very toxic relationship one of my client had with the kid's mom. I mean, very, very toxic between them. So much though, so that my client was very legitimately worried about seeing the child, because if he saw the child, the mom was going to get upset with the child and bad things were going to happen, right? So he said, all right, let's terminate, because I can't go see the kid because it's just not in this kid's best interest at all, because I'm not going to take the kid. I'm not in that position, but if I see the kid, then she's going to make this kid's life terrible. So we went through an entire trial, and we had pretty good arguments for it. And the judge said, no, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm still not going to do this because the kid needs support. So she's either has to get remarried and then you can terminate, or you just don't see the kid and you pay child support. So. Okay. Q33, yeah, your husband would adopt your son, but your ex is probably not allowing that, and that's one of the toughest situations you can be in. I'm sorry for that. Sugar Tats, I love that handle, by the way. Hello, thank you. I'm in Indiana. We have lots of issues with my husband's ex-wife seeing his son. We spent thousands and just have guidelines. It sucks. Tell me what guidelines means. We don't use that term here in Utah, so tell me what guidelines means, Sugar Tats. Southern Mama, my husband adopted my daughter in 2017. I went through a lot back and forth and learned so much. Yeah, step-parent adoptions can be very, very difficult. Most of the time they're actually pretty good, but they can be extraordinarily difficult. And yeah, especially when you have to terminate somebody, like they just don't want it to happen, and you have to go terminate their parental rights so the other parent can adopt. That gets sticky, and that costs a lot of money, let me tell you. User 09, how long does an ex have to pay alimony for? I'll be out. That's my wife. To do what? Okay. All right, I'll be off in a couple minutes. All right, that's my wife telling me I need to get off in a couple minutes here. Okay, user 09, how long does an ex have to pay? No, turn that off. Pay alimony for, I'm a SAHM, I don't know what that means. We're still legally married. So this is my general rule. If you're married 0 to 4 years, this is Utah specific, so maybe totally different in California, I think it's totally different than this. But if it's 0 to 4 years that you're married, you're probably not getting alimony because you just haven't been married long enough. 4 to 6 years, then you're in that kind of iffy stage, but probably getting something, probably along the lines of 2 to 3 years. If it's 7 plus, then yeah, you're definitely getting alimony. And in Utah, it's usually for somewhere around half the length of the marriage. Now, it can be up to the entire length of the marriage, but it's usually somewhere around half. When we do this, we try to negotiate down from 50% down to 40 and 30%. And, when we're on the other side trying to get it, and we're trying to get it for a longer period of time, but it's usually somewhere around half. Oh, visitation guidelines. Oh, so you have orders for, Sugar Tats, you have orders for visitation. So you haven't finalized the case is what it comes down to. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Some of these, there are only so many things we can fix as attorneys, and you can't fix jerk, and you can't fix stupid. So it's just unfortunate, and I'm sorry going through this. I really am. Some people are just terrible, and you just have to learn how to deal with that, unfortunately. So, and I know that's not what you want to hear, and I apologize that I have to kind of talk about it that way, but really, there are only so many things we as attorneys can fix. All right, I'm gonna do a couple more of these, and then I got to take off. Thanks for giving me time. Yeah, absolutely. They're great. Great questions, Sugar Tats. I appreciate it. Birth father eventually signed consent, but I learned so much how to deal with the punitive. Yeah, it's so hard. I'm an adoptive father, and let me tell you that adoption is like the best thing on the earth. I love adoption. I really do. I'm a total evangelical for adoption, but it's very, very difficult. We went through a situation where we got we were there for the birth, and then we named our son. I gave him his first bottle. I bonded immediately. I loved that kid so much. Just bonded straight away. And then a few hours later, mom decided to take him back. And in Missouri, which is where she was, she had 48 hours to do that. So we went away thinking that we had lost our kid, and I bonded with him, and I cried like a little child. I was so distraught. And then, a couple days later, she changed her mind again, and we got him, and it all worked out. But it's very, very difficult emotionally, big roller coaster. So adoption's fantastic, but it's also extraordinarily difficult in a lot of situations. Big Daddy, thanks for fighting for us. Yeah, man. I appreciate that. I fight for all my clients. Tony, if you have more than 50% custody, why do I still have to pay child support? Oh, that's a good question. This is probably my last one, and then I have to go eat dinner with the family. Otherwise, I'm probably going to get divorced. So let me do this. That's actually, like, under Utah law, that would be very, very difficult to do. So let's say you had a situation where you have like 55% custody and the other person has 45% custody. Then if you make, sorry, I got some in my eye. Then if you make a lot more than the other person, so let's say you make like $200,000 a year and the other person makes $30,000 a year, you are going to pay something, right? Because that's just how the calculator works. That's how the legislature set it up. And the guidelines, the child support guidelines are such that you're going to pay something. But if you have majority time, you have to make a lot more than the other person in order to pay them much of it. I mean, really anything here in Utah. And in other states, it may be totally different. Maybe California is different because their child support guidelines are nuts. You pay humongous amounts of money and they don't make a lot of sense. Illinois, I know, has some very interesting child support guidelines. So maybe in states like that, that's more common, but here in Utah, it's almost impossible to do. Okay. What's your view on 50-50 custody? We have a lot of dads here in Tennessee trying to pass it as a standard. Okay, this will be my last one, and then I'm gonna go. So, okay, so here's the research data. As far as I understand it, there's an effect size. So they do research on different types of parent time arrangements, right? To see the outcome effects on kids, whether or not it's better effects or not great effects on kids. So it looks like 50-50 or something near 50-50 actually does a little bit better. Kids have a little bit better outcomes in situations like that, but the effect size is actually really small. I think it's 0.1, and 0.2 is, at 0.2, you're getting something that means something, but 0.1 is almost noise, almost statistical noise. So really, it means that it just doesn't have that much of an effect at all. There's a very, very small positive effect, but we just don't know if that's by chance, really, or there's something more to it. And we used to think, years ago, like 5 years ago, 50-50 was the rage, really, and it was going to fix a lot of problems and have much better outcomes for kids. And we're just finding that that's not quite the case. Now, I'm of the opinion that both parents need to be involved in the kids' lives, and probably closer to a 50-50, like a 60-40, 35-65, something like that is going to benefit children. Because when you get down to where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, which was like a 90-10 split, that Not good for kids. Absolutely not good for kids, because that just meant that guys never saw their kids. So it was moms raising the kids all the time without a male influence for the most part. And when you look at the psychological and statistical data on that sort of stuff, when men are not around their kids, bad stuff happens, especially to little girls. Little girls do not do well at all without their fathers around. Unless their fathers are complete jerks. There are always exceptions to that. But if it's a good, normal guy and you just can't make a marriage work, then little girls do not do well without fathers around. And little boys and teenage boys especially, they tend to get violent, and they don't do as well as school without their dad around. So I think the more time you get kind of closer to 50-50, you're going to have better effects, but it's not some sort of panacea. Okay. All right, Janet asked this. Crap. Okay, I'll do this. I'm trying to go back to court 50-50, but my husband's ex-wife is not very nice. Any suggestions? I'm going to give you this quick suggestion. I'm going to go eat dinner with my family. Go get an attorney. An attorney in your area that is very good at this. Spend the money that's necessary. Get really good advice on it, and then follow that advice. I can answer something here, and I'll do this again. So Janet, if you want to DM me and ask me more specifics, or you want to get on the next time I do a live chat, live Q&A, that's great. But go find a good attorney, tell the attorney exactly what's going on, and then follow that attorney's advice. Okay, everybody, it has been an absolute pleasure. I really thank you for this. I'll be back on. If you have anything else, you need any other questions answered, you can always DM me. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye.